Anyway, what we're going to do tonight is we are really going to go through threads to use on the serger, because I think it's a subject we need to cover. So I have no daredevil demo tonight. We're just going to look at threads. But I think you're going to find it interesting. And then I shall run on next week and do some more on decorative threads and stitching. So this week it's just about threads. So one of the best things about sergers and chain and cover, but it's 90% of the decorative stitching is done on the serger, but I'll cover both. One of the best things about it is we can use really heavy thread on the serger. In fact, we can even use ribbon. So, why wouldn't we? If we can do it, we should. So it's a lot of fun. So that's what I'm going to go through tonight. I'm going to show you your choices and how you can make it work for you, because I think some of you have trouble with it. And every so often I will stop and take questions. Okay, so the other thing to mention is this is running off my public page, but in fact I have written notes on this subject because I know you don't catch everything I say. I know you don't remember, and neither do I. So I typed the notes out. They're only short notes, but they are in the file section of my Facebook group, which is Deb Cannon Serger Sanity Projects, and I have already put them up. And some of you try and download from the post file, and if you have trouble, just go into the files section on that group and that you should be able to download them. So, lovely to see you people from Australia. Right, okay, so what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the thread. So the first thing I want to talk about is the needles, because that's a huge part of it, isn't it? So most of the time we're looking at the 01 and the 02 serger needle, okay? So if you have a 4-thread serger, that's your 2 needles. If you have a big old Triumph and Ovation, you have 5 needles. Well, I'm talking about the 2 needles on the right, what we call the serger needles, the 01 and the 02. So in that position, you can use any needle. It doesn't have to be ELX 705 CF, okay? It can be any needle. So if I'm doing something that requires a thick thread in the needle, I'm going to use a needle with a bigger eye. So the needles I recommend when you're using decorative thread may be a top stitch needle, because a top stitch needle has a bigger eye. And also a metallic needle, because the eye of the metallic needle is a little bit smoother. So if you're working with metallic thread or even a rayon, it's going to cause less friction on your thread. So that's the first thing. Of course, now I'm going to go on to those other 3 needles, the cover and chain needles, generally called C1, C2, and C3. And these needles, we do actually have to have ELX 705 CF, okay? That is the best needle to make your chain and cover stitches. It's slightly different in shape. And for those, we can't get a bigger eye. We have just the eye we have. So we're a little bit more limited in what threads we can use going through the eye of the needle. But any 12 weight, and I'm going to show you the 12 weights, we'll go through that needle, okay? You won't probably use an 8-weight thread, which is the heavier thread, but I'm going to get to that. So here's me saying 12 and 8, and you're going, what is she talking about? Well, it took me ages to work it out, but let me explain it. The way they measure thread is they measure the size of it and they give us numbers, but I don't think it's that logical. So let me just grab some. So here I have just regular embroidery thread that we use on a embroidery machine. And some of you say, oh, can I use that? Because I know you all have a huge stock of it. But let me just say that embroidery thread is embroidery thread, and you pay quite a lot for it. So you may want to think twice about using it on the serger, because you'll need quite a lot of it. And if you're thinking of constructing a garment, it may not be as strong as regular serger thread. Okay, so that's just touching on embroidery thread. Weight of embroidery thread, 40, number 40. Okay, here we have a much thicker thread. Do you see that? It's almost like a string weight, isn't it? And this is a much heavier thread. And this is actually, I think it's a 3 It's a 3 weight. So the strange thing about it is the smaller the number, the thicker the thread. Okay? The smaller the number, the thicker the thread. And then the pearl cotton, which is something that you probably all know, pearl cotton, that is generally an 8 weight. And I have a cone of that. Let me just reach for it. I probably was a bit close then, sorry. But this is a typical pearl cotton, and that's generally an 8 weight. Okay, so 8, very heavy, 3, embroidery thread, 40. Okay? And, you know, people say, how do I know what weight it is? Well, generally, if you look on it, it will say number 8. Sorry, can you see that? Number 8. And it says on here, number 3. Doesn't say it on the embroidery thread, but I'm presuming it's 40. So that is talking about the weights. And of course, you know, let me just show you something. You remember I said to you that some stitches you have to put the decorative thread in the needle. And one I'm particularly thinking of, and remember I'm not really doing stitches tonight, I'm just doing threads, is when you do blanket stitch, that decorative thread has to go in the needle. Okay? And I've actually used a pearl cotton type weight, so that's an 8 weight, and I used a top stitch needle. And because it's never easy getting a thick thread in, you need to know about these. These are 6-loop needle threaders, and they're very fine wires that you put through the eye of the needle and pull the thread through. Super simple for threading the needle. Now, we mentioned weights of thread, but there's other things we can use as well. We can use ribbon, okay? So here I have some ribbon. This is actually a wire line metallic ribbon. It's very, very soft. And I have used stiffer ribbon. Stiffer ribbon is much harder to work through the loopers. And of course, you would put it through the loopers because you're not going to get ribbon through any eye of a needle. But let me pull it out and show you. See, it's just a very soft ribbon. And it makes a really fun finish for something like the edge of a bold wool jacket. And here I have a silk ribbon. Now, well, silk's always great, expensive. You can get a polyester equivalent. I just don't have any. But this is, let me think, what size is this? 2mm. And it goes through dead easy. And just by the by, if I get a blockage in my tubes, I generally put this in the metal threader thing, the big long one, and pull it through because it pulls out any blockage you've got in there. Sometimes the wire just leaves it there. But I tie a piece of silk ribbon on and pull it through. So any questions, Richard?
Yes.
He's got some. Go on.
Someone said cut out jacket at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, question mark.
Yes, I shall cover that at the end.
Yes.
Somebody's saying, is there a class tomorrow? Yes, there is.
But you'll cover that.
I will cover it at the end. I've got it written down, so we're covered.
Is 01 the left, whatever that
Yes, the 01 needle is the left of the 2 needles. And you know, I wish we didn't call it by numbers, because anybody that knows me knows numbers. I can't even remember my phone number. I wish we called it the wide needle and the narrow needle. So think of wide as 1. And I don't have a clever bit for the 2 needle, but the wide needle is the 01 and the narrow needle is the 02.
Does pearl cotton thread shrink when washed?
Does pearl cotton thread shrink when washed? I haven't had a problem with it. So I can't answer that, but I haven't. And I certainly wouldn't fancy washing it before I used it. So yeah. Anyway, to go on, that's a good question. Don't have an answer. Anybody that knows, write up. Okay, so the ribbon that I'm talking about, we would use in the chain looper. So, where you put your thread depends on your stitch. Well, yes. So I have, oh, Richard, I think I left it beside you. It's a big pile of papers in the printer. I have a big file called Working with Decorative Thread, Having Fun with Decorative Threads. And it's like 20 pages. Thank you. It's 20 pages, and you'll find it on my website. And it's a completely free download. You just have to go in and, as if you're going to pay for it, but of course it's free, so you won't. But it gives you where I put the threads for each stitch, and it gives you more information. So make sure you download that. It's a really good reference point. And I've slightly updated it because the thing with thread is sometimes they become obsolete. So I don't have some of the thread I used to have just because it's hard to get hold of. So I've kind of replaced them. So I've put the newer threads in there as well. But that's a really valuable resource. As I said, it's 20 pages, so it's nighttime reading. Right. So jean stitch. I didn't cover jean stitch because I actually don't have any. But jean stitch is probably in between an 8 and a 12. It's a little bit heavier than 12 weight. But I just want to go back to cover and chain because I've been talking about Serger. Cover and chain, you're going to use a 12 weight in the needle. But you can use anything in the chain looper. You can use ribbon, you can use 3 weight, 8 weight. And of course, sometimes some of you might have trouble threading it, but we'll cover that next week too. So I did want to cover woolly nylon because it's a subject that, well, a lot of people use woolly nylon. And I actually have to say this, and I'm trying not to, but I don't think about woolly nylon as being a decorative thread. But in many ways, it is. And let me show you where I've used it. I used it on the ruffles on this baby's jacket. And of course, it's great on children's wear. I'm trying to find one. It's great on, you see that pink variegated thread? It's great on children's wear because it's soft. And also, remember, it is very good on rolled hems for covering the edge because it's kind of a filament. It's lots of different threads put together. And you can find 100 different types. Well, maybe not 100, but there's so many different makes. And the question that's going to come up, and I know it is does it melt when you iron it? Well, I've done some research on it, and there's 2 types of woolly nylon. There's woolly, this is the Serger, the maxi lock stretch. There's 2 types. There's one made of poly, and there's one made of nylon. And the nylon one is softer and harder wearing, but it melts at a lower temperature than the poly one. And I know that Wonderfil now has a line called Soft Lock, and that's poly, okay? Comes in some great colors and some variegators. So, you know, there is a place in this world for woolly nylon. It's a very good thread. And it's good, you know, for wave stitch or anything where you're covering the edge. So it's also good, I just to tell you the other things it's good for, because we might as well just give it a good run. It's good for rolled hem, it's good for wave stitch, it's good for stitching on knits. And remember, a lot of manufacturing companies put it in the needle as well. So when you see people say you can't use it in the needle, yes you can, yes you can. It gives a softer seam, but it's most commonly used in the upper and lower looper to make that softer seam. Okay, so that's the end of poly. Of woolly nylon. Any questions on woolly nylon, Richard?
Do you use a thread carrier for the ribbon?
Do I use a thread carrier for the ribbon? Yes, I do. I absolutely do, yes. And we will cover that next week. We'll stitch some ribbon next week. So now I want to go on to what I call my real serious decorative threads. So we have a variety of content in these threads. So let's just run through that. Just pull my piece of...
One lady says, how does 12 weight compare to regular thread?
How does 12 weight compare to regular thread, somebody said. It is much heavier. If you are sewing on a sewing machine, you can actually sew a 12 weight. So it may be around your top stitch weight, you know, that kind of weight. It's a bit heavier, but it's not as heavy as a 12 weight. And I actually...
She's talking about 12 weight. How does 12 weight compare to regular thread?
How does 12 weight compare to regular thread?
Yeah.
Oh, it's much heavier. It's much heavier. But you can use 12 weight in your sewing machine. And I quite often, you know, if you've never done decorative thread work, you're going to find 12 weight much easier than 8 weight. But 8 weight's easy too. I just think it's easier to learn on 12 weight. And of course it goes much further. You know, you get more yarn for the money when you use 12 weight. So the only other thing with woolly nylon, going back, is it is quite hard to thread through the needle, and that's when you would be well to use one of these needle threaders. And also threading it through the machine, you're going to use the thread carrier. So let's go on to the heavy decorative threads. What are they made out of? This is one that's, I don't find that often, but it's a great thread. It's all polyester. It's designer 7, and it's a light 8 weight. I have to tell you that I think there's a lack of uniformity in this 8 number. And then I have, so this is a polyester, hard wearing. Then we have cottons, just like the pearl cottons. This is eleganza. It's 100% cotton, beautiful soft thread, lovely colours. I tend to use it on clothing. I will quite often use cotton thread when I'm doing decorative work on clothing. Unless I want it to be flashy, and then I'll use a rayon. But rayon is another choice. Rayon is shiny, okay? Rayon is super, super shiny. I have got loads of rayon here. Let me find it. Here we go. Rayon, shiny, shiny, shiny. And you know, you can use it for a lot of things. It's not as hard wearing as cotton perhaps, but it's not hard wearing either. So I use a lot of rayon when I'm doing stitching on my jackets to make them look super fun. And then we have metallics, and metallics aren't as terrifying as they are on the sewing machine, okay? They do behave better on the serger. They are a bit stiffer, okay? So when they're on the machine, they can sometimes jump about and argue with each other. But they're still, I think, easier to sew than on the sewing machine. And here's another metallic. This is a real heavy metallic. It's an 8 weight. It's a sizzle. They are actually, I believe, discontinuing sizzle. But it's a great thread, but you have to be careful where you use it. It's very sharp. You know, you wouldn't want to use it on clothing. Great for bags and things. And actually, I have it on this bag here in the red. See at the bottom. So, you know, a nice decor thread. Okay, the next thing I want to say is the biggest problem with decorative. Oh, I don't think I got any questions. You just said so.
What weight is eleganza?
What weight is eleganza? Eleganza is 8.
And don't forget you can buy these on our shop.
Yeah. And I have eleganza and some of these on my shop, but not all. Okay, so this is the bit I want to get onto. The problem you are going to have with threads is nothing to do with the thread. It's nothing to do with the weight of the thread. It's the shape of the spool, okay? That is the major problem. So I have some different spools here to show you as to why some are more difficult than others and how we can get around that. So let me tell you, these type of threads with the bottoms that come out further, fabulous. This is a 12 weight. No problem with those. And a lot of the threads have those nice bottoms. Now you're going to take off the plastic thing, because otherwise if you sit it on top, I guarantee you it's going to get caught around there. So take that off, slide that on, and you are good to go. And you really shouldn't have much problem. Okay? Now, this is the type of spool that will give you trouble. These big ones, these square ones with, it's got a short stump underneath. So what happens is the thread gets caught underneath, and that whenever the thread gets hampered, you'll get a change in the width of your stitch, okay? And then it might break after that. But it's really important the thread flows freely. So this is the kind of spool that will give you trouble. And I have 2 suggestions for you. One, throw it right across the room, okay? So it has miles to run. And the other thing is just, pull it up into a pile and just run from the pile. Once you get some of the weight off this, it will become a lot easier to use. But when you first start these big spools, they are quite temperamental. And then my favorite size is the smaller size, because it's lighter and it doesn't, even though it's got that stumpy bit underneath, it doesn't give you a problem. It runs freely. And I think because it's not so heavy, it doesn't get caught. Now, the problem with this one is when you get to the end of it, it gets very light and it goes boom, 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 boom on top of your machine, and then it can tangle. Okay? Things that can help you. and not help you. This disc is really useful. Now, I actually put this disc on top sometimes because it just pulls the thread out, but I don't use it very often. I find little trouble with using the spools on the thing. But there's one thought. And this is something I just want to address because some people love them and I hate them. So you all want to know what it is, don't you? It's a thread net. Listen, I have never, ever found a time when a thread net helped me. It hampers the feed and it varies it from the bottom to the top. So it narrows my stitches. Now, let me add to that. If they work fabulously for you, great. I'm just saying they don't work for me. So I have never successfully used a thread net on any of my threads. So I just want to tell you that. So that's all about the thread shapes. Oh, the worst one. I didn't show you the worst one. The worst one is this one. This is impossible to feed from. Do you see? Because it's kind of underneath itself. So it's nearly impossible to successfully feed this into the serger. Okay? You're better off running it onto something else or just piling it up on the floor. Pull it up. Richard, any questions on that?
Yeah, let's have a look. Do you have to slow down the machine when using heavier weight threads?
Yeah, somebody said, do you have to slow down the machine when you use heavyweight threads? Yes, because there is no braking system in there. I will cover this next week. You need to keep a steady pace, and what you don't want to do is stop and then suddenly accelerate because you get a loop and a misstitch. Okay, so just nice and steady speed-wise. Okay, and when I'm in class, I say to people, "You're going too fast. You're going too fast," and they get away with it. So I think that's just me being cautious. But I think the secret is not to heavily stop and accelerate because you have no brakes. So let's just have a quick look at the weights of the threads. And what I'm going to do is turn you around and show you them because I think that's just easier.
Some lady would like to know where is the blouse pattern available? Which ones he's talking about.
I will cover that at the end. It's at the end of my thing. Yeah. Somebody's asking for the t-shirt pattern. I'll tell you again. So great. 12 weights. They are so manageable on the serger. Okay, this is Glamour. It's metallic. Now, it's a little bit stiff. So, you know, remember that. Stiffer threads can sometimes give you trouble. It's great in the chain needles for doing top stitching with chain. Okay, so that's a 12 weight. I had these all sorts. Oh, here they are. They're all here. So that's Glamour. And you see how it is I think it's a rayon and a metallic. Very pretty. And I use those quite a lot. And remember that they do so many variegated threads now. Okay, so many variegated. And I just think they're so pretty. And why I like variegated is look at this. Don't you think it's fun? This is just a 3-thread overlock, but you see how pretty the stitch comes out using variegated threads. So we have Glamour, that's the metallic, and then we have Accent, that's a rayon, and it's a super easy thread to use. It comes in lots of great colors, and it comes in variegated. And then if we want to go on to cottons, there are plenty of 12-weight cottons. These are Fruity and Tutti from Wonderful. I actually don't stock these ones, but I do stock the Accent and the Glamour. But aren't they pretty? So 12-weight threads, can't beat them. Let me just come back and tell you a couple of things about 12-weight threads. I want to say that you're going to use them in your chain needles. And I want to say this, if you have the big Ovation, the big Triumph, or the big Acclaim, and you do wave stitch, you can use an 8-weight thread without any trouble. But I think going down slightly, I do have problem in class with the slightly smaller ones. So those 12 weights are perfect for you for wave stitch and make a very, very pretty wave stitch. So that would be my choice if I have any of those other machines. 8 weights. I'm going to the really heavy stuff now. The really heavy stuff can be used anywhere on the serger, and just about everything I do is 8 weight. But it can only be used in the chain looper on the cover and chain side. So let's have a look at some of those threads because they're really terribly pretty. So here we have Dazzle. Whoops, you can't see, can you? Because I forgot to move the camera. Right, here we have Dazzle. Okay, this is a rayon, and then it has a glitter thread through it. So I use that a lot. They also do Razzle, which is just, it doesn't, this is a Razzle. It doesn't have any sparkly on it. And this is a variegated Razzle, very soft. And I use that a lot for decorative stitching. And then we have the cottons. I just love this variegated one. The cottons, and they're the eleganzas, and this is what you'd liken to a pearl cotton, and I just think they're really super pretty, and they come in solids and they come in variegateds, and they very rarely give me trouble. And even though they're an 8 weight, I have got this through the needle on the chain needles. It's tight, but I have. So another thread I want to show you is this is Wirely, and it's candlelight. And I used to use it a lot, but it's quite hard to come by these days. And finally, here's another one that I really, really like, and it's Madeira Katona. And this is a heavier than a 8 weight. I think it's a 4. But see how it's lots of different strands, and it's really, really pretty. And I have used it, I believe, on this bag. Let me show you. Actually, no, that's Razzle. It's on my other bag, so I can't show you. But I love this thread, and I love the colour of it. And that's the Katona. And it does come in a 12 weight and an 8 weight. So watch what you're buying when you buy it so you get the right weight. So just a couple of other things I want to show you, because there's more you can do with threads than just, you know, decorative finishes. You can actually make more thread. Okay, so here's some I've made, and this, I'm not sure what stitch I used for it, but isn't it pretty? And you can make these trims up for your sewing. Here's a trim. It's a 3-thread narrow, and I sewed it over ribbon, and you can sew that onto clothing, and I think that's really pretty. I think I changed the stitch there, but isn't that pretty? Again, using, that's an 8 weight thread that I've used. There's more things you can do with these cords. I mean, I have so many small amounts of decorative thread that I often think I should just make them into cords, because you can do it. Let me move you back now. You can do all sorts of things with cords. You can braid them. You can sew them on clothing, sew them around necklines. What did I do with it the other day? Oh, couching on my sewing machine. I'm not wild about sewing in wool on couching, but I think to sew in those pretty round and sparkly threads and everything is just super fun. So do I have any questions, Richard?
Well, what are the brands you are showing? Are they in your notes?
Yeah, all the brands I've shown you are in my notes. I've basically shown you a few, but the ones I stock are the Wonderful ones, but not all of them. But they're on my website.
And
12 weight and 8 weight. That's what I really want you to not so much worry about the brand, but understand that there's time to use 8 weight and there's a time to use 12. Yes, Richard.
Well, they're on our site, don't forget, on your shop.
Yeah, they are on my site, yeah. My website.
Dazzle.
Razzle, Dazzle, Eleganza, Accent 12 weight, Glamour 12 weight. And I have some Sizzle, but they're discontinuing Sizzle. And what they're doing is they're bringing in this kind of more metallic-y collection called Starry Nights. It's pretty. And it's kind of a bit more muted, but still glittery. Can you see that? Aren't they pretty? So just really some new colours. Kind of fun. And those are a rayon with a strand of metallic. So yes, so it's coming up to Halloween. So this is my Halloween jacket, which is the same as my Stacy jacket, the class we're doing this week, but I made it much longer. But I did it out of Halloween print, and it has a panel on the back rather than my quilting patchwork type thing. But I have a couple of other things to show you. I don't know if any of you know, but for many years I worked in China. I basically designed for factories, and I worked in factories. But I designed product for factories, and most of them were miniatures. Well, nearly all of them. And I have a few of them, and because they're Halloween based, I thought I'd put my website. So I'm just going to show you a few of them because I think you'll find them quite interesting. These were all made on a sewing machine. Okay, so there's a little bit of handwork in there, but I think you'll find them fun. Right, this is a dragon. I'm a big one for dragons, okay? So this is, I'm not sure which one this is. Do you know, Richard? Richard knows them better than me. Jack-o'-lantern, I think. That's Jack-o'-lantern. And then this is Cackle the cat. These are about 3.5 inches. Cackle the cat. This is Broomstick Dragon. These are all fully jointed, and actually I did make some that were just an inch high. This is one of my favorite ones. Remember, I designed all these. This is Skellington, and I designed his coat, and I always thought it was so cute, so neat. I was super impressed with myself on that one. This is an old favorite, Pumpkin Mouse, and many of these are made out of mohair, which was actually the original fabric for teddy bears back in the day, before they had nylon and fur fabric. This is a witch. This is a witch called Spellchick, and she has a little pumpkin with a little tiny mouse in. Can you see that little mouse? So lots of detail on them. And then this is Jacko. He's a little tiny bear. He's only about 2 inches, and he has a pumpkin. And then this is my favorite from this group today. And this is, which one's this, Richard? Scaredy Cat Mouse. Can you see him? And he's got a little tiny stick with a little cat on it and little whiskers. He's a little mouse. Because it's coming up to Halloween, I want to remind you that I do have patterns. Actually, I'll bring you around because these are too big to fit in that screen. I do have my pumpkin dolls. Now, I know these aren't everybody's cup of tea, I know it, but I love them. And they're actually a pattern, and it's on my website to make these dolls. And I used Osnaburg fabric, and I just dyed it orange. But I just want to show you because I think she's so cute. Look, she has bloomers, and then she has a petticoat. You can see the petticoat, and then her dress. Isn't she sweet? I love her. So that is a pattern on my website, which the reason I'm telling you that is because that's what I'm offering you this week. So Rich is going to find the keys with no numbers on and type FB50. That is the discount code to get 20% off any of the patterns on my website. Not classes, not threads, but patterns. And somebody will type that in for me, I'm sure. But can you believe this is the 50th live? That's amazing. So yeah, I just want to say what I'm doing this, or I just want to say this t-shirt, again, it's the Seattle tee, and it's a pattern from So English Fabrics. The fabric is a French terry, that's also from them. And it comes in a round neck, a scoop neck, and a V-neck. And I want to say, those of you doing the Stacy cloth, Stacy jacket, it's just a cotton weight jean jacket. And we actually used decorative thread on that. And you can use 8 weight or 12. I used 8 weight. Let me show you the front. See that orange? That's chain stitch. That's dazzle in there. And then you can see it on the front. So I used quite a lot. But on the back, I used glamour. So yeah, fun to decorate your clothing as well. So yeah, so tomorrow, Stacy jacket is actually this Saturday and Sunday. But tomorrow we're doing cutting out. And also we do a little practice one first, just so you all know where to find me. And with any questions you have about the preparation. And I will be there at 3 o'clock tomorrow in the Stacy group for those of you that are doing that class. I had the flat lock purse. I told you that last week, but I didn't have the purse. I had the flat lock purse class coming up on the 24th. That's the flat lock purse. And actually we're going to do a braided handle just because it's more fun. But that's a cute little purse. Lots of decorative stitching on that. Lots of decorative thread. Okay. And remember my website's debcanhamstudio.com. Richard, do we have any questions?
Oh, I've got lots, but maybe you want to come back to them. They all scrolled past me now. But,
He's overwhelmed.
yeah.
One question at a time, otherwise he's done.
Well, you'll scroll away, unfortunately.
What happens is it scrolls away from him. But you know, if I didn't answer your question live, then I will certainly come back and write in afterwards and make sure that you get answers. Did you find any, Richard?
Well, I've asked you the ones already that I could find. That's about it, really.
He says that's it. Listen, it's been a lot of fun being here. I hope you all have a great week. I'm going to do more on decorative next week. I think decorative stitching is just so much fun on the Serger. You can see nearly everything behind me has decorative stitching on. Some of it's sewing, that's sewing and that's sewing, but everything else that has glossy thread on is Serger. I've used the Serger to do it. Here's a little purse. Isn't that cute? Has decorative thread on it. Decorative stitching. And of course there's always my creative tote, which is the biggest. It's like a 101 class on decorative thread. So lots of thread on there, okay? Lots of decorative thread, lots of stitching. So anyway, I will look at your questions and get back to you. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And I will see some of you tomorrow. And I will see the rest of you hopefully next Monday. So have a great week. Thanks so much for coming in to see me.